Emily Dickinson's Biography and Poem Analysis by Molly, Tony, Tyler, and Danielle, Lit Group 1. Emily Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830. She lived her entire life in Amherst, Massachusetts, and she died on May 15, 1886, at the young age of 55. It was said that she died of Bright's disease, and Bright's disease is known better to us as kidney disease. It is safe to assume Dickinson had kidney failure of some kind. Along with kidneys, Bright's disease may also include high blood pressure and heart disease, which Emily may have had as well. Biography. Emily was born Emily Elizabeth Dickinson by the parents of Edward and Emily Dickinson. She had two other siblings as well, William, born in 1829, and Lavinia, born 1833, making her the middle child. They all attended one-room primary school, and later Emily and her sister moved on to Amherst Academy. At the age of 15, she left Amherst Academy to continue her schooling at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary. She began writing as a young teenager, and later on in life was influenced by the Civil War that was unfolding around her. She never used a pen name, and many of her works were published anonymously and after her death. Many of her influences include Leonard Humphrey, who was a principal at Emily's school at the time, and a friend, Benjamin Newton, who sent her her first poetry book by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Emily Dickinson's struggle with gender and sexual identity. At the age of 19, she was introduced to a woman named Susan Gilbert. Susan was a mathematician also from Massachusetts. Dickinson described this as her first love and also as when love first began, on the steps, at the front door, and under the evergreens. Gilbert was an item of affection to both Emily and her brother William. The two women would exchange books and read poetry to each other. In a letter to Gilbert, Dickinson discussed how her feelings towards Gilbert are atypical. This transitioned in her writing as she switched between male and female pronouns and perspectives. Later on, although Emily and Gilbert had their fling, ultimately Gilbert ended up with her brother William.
Today we will be analyzing I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died by Emily Dickinson. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air. Between the heaves of storm, the eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for the last onset. When the king be witnessed in the room, I willed my keepsakes, signed away what portion of me be assignable. And then it was there interposed a fly, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And then the windows failed. And then I could not see to see. That was a reading of I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died by Emily Dickinson. For further appreciation of I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died by Emily Dickinson, we will be covering the elements of the speaker, situation and setting, theme and tone, diction and syntax, imagery or figurative speech, and Emily Dickinson's style, as well as its importance.
Elements of the speaker. Symbolism was used to compare the fly to death. It also represents life flashing before the eyes. Narration. The whole poem is narrated in first person. The story is told in the present tense. Though we are invited into the moment at hand, we are offered no explanation as to what happened to propel the speaker to death.
At the beginning of the poem, Emily Dickinson, in the first stanza, describes a place after she supposedly dies, and it is not on Earth, but it is not in the quote-unquote afterlife. She's describing the nothing. The next stanza, she talks about the room, and she gets more descriptive, and we are to believe this is a place she is familiar with, and when you go on to the next stanza, we soon find out, or we are led to believe, that this is her old room, which lets the reader infer that she is putting herself in her old house. In the final stanza, she talks about how it goes away, everything. And that is us believing, that is the light finally getting to her, officially to us, and she then officially passes away. The situation for this poem is the speaker, Emily Dickinson, walking us through the process of her death while she herself is dead. This is supported throughout the poem while the fly is used as a symbol of death. While reading this poem, you'll be unsure of the setting. There's so many settings that you could perceive and pull out. At the beginning, she is in the in-between. As I said in the last slide, she's not in the afterlife yet, but she's not on Earth. Then we get into this room where she's familiar with it, and the reader doesn't know what it is yet until the third stanza, where it is to believe it is her old room in her old house. And then finally, the light gets her, and she is now in the afterlife. Theme of its own. This poem has many recurring themes, and one of them would be death. The way she talks about death can be seen as an expression of her dying on the inside. We did some research and found out that her loved one passed away right before she wrote this, driving her to write this poem. This could be her reaching out to her readers, showing how she has emotionally been affected by her lover's death. Another theme could have been her fleetingness of life and telling the readers to enjoy every second you have and appreciate the time on this earth because it can go away just as fast as you got here. Now, the tone was a little different. Some may view this as calming and dreamy because of the way she approaches the poem, and others would be more uneasy and have a skittish tone. Either way, I think we all can agree this poem has a sense of spookiness where your hair stands up on your body.
Diction and syntax. Some diction are: Emily Dickinson left the audience emphasized. She emphasized stillness in the poem. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. This alludes to her being inside the eye of a hurricane where everything is still and calm. Stillness also make one remnants of death. To write is syntax. The use of hyphen to create dramatic pause which invoke shaky speech, struggling to grasp their breath. When the hyphen is placed at the end of the verse, it recreates the effect of a sigh. Another interpretation is that the pause were to appreciate the stillness of the room. Figurative language. The three types of figurative language that we see during this poem are simile, imagery, and allusion. An example of simile is: the stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air. An example of imagery is: there interposed a fly with blur unturned, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And finally, an example of allusion is: I heard a fly buzz when I died. These are the three examples that we found, but there's more. Figurative language and imagery. To clarify more on the three figurative language that we just spoke about in the previous slide: simile, imagery, and allusion. The simile in the poem of the I hear a fly buzz was the stillness in the room, was like the stillness in the air. This is to represent on the tension that is represented for nothing to happen and something quiet that will happen. The next one is imagery. The window failing is representative of the end of the speaker lingo between the room and the light. There is also use of imagery in lines between the heave and between the light. These two lines showcase sense of sight, since you can describe something as between. Finally, allusion. The fly played the role of a grim reaper. It is there when the speaker die. It's there as they resign. Finally, to their fate, it is there when there is no light and the window fail, to represent that you can't reach heaven. The fly is like a grim reaper, leading you way to a good life. But since the window is closed, which is the way to heaven, it's ended, which you can't reach.
Emily Dickinson's Biography and Poem Analysis by Molly, Tony, Tyler, and Danielle.